How are you guys doing today? I'm doing all right. Thanks for asking. Actually, I haven't made this a secret on Twitter, but I'm somewhat depressed about the cancellation of the FF15 DLCs, barring episode Arden. As much as that game was busted and flawed and like not amazing in so many ways, I really liked it. And I just wrapped up all the trophies in all the FF15 DLC content recently, which was a grueling, almost 200-hour process. And I was so excited to go back in 2019 and get to play four more pieces of content that were probably going to be the best pieces of content just based on how the DLC kept improving uh, one after the other. And the trailer for episode Arden, by the way, looks fucking fantastic. It looks really good. It takes place 30 years before in like a still constructed Insomnia that's not totally destroyed. It looks so good. Yeah, so no Arena DLC, no Luna Freya, and no Noctis. Which, of course, Arden is a prologue. It takes place 30 years before. And the other three were a set of three that were going to tell one continuous story that was going to be an alternate, presumably happy ending to the story. In case you don't know, FF15 does not have a happy ending, and it's great. The ending's one of the things that really lands, actually. But I was really looking forward to alternate, presumably happy ending. So there's still episode Arden that's coming out. There's FF14 crossover quest coming out that is probably similar to the Terra Battle one we checked out recently, and FF15 Comrades is getting its standalone release, which great, whatever. As far as I know, Arden's not canceled for PC, Commando Joe, but I mean, admittedly, I could have missed something. I don't think it is. I think the only thing, because they did cancel certain things for PC, so like PC's not getting standalone Comrades, as far as I know. It's only getting the Comrades built into the game, which is the same, so it doesn't really matter. It's just not a different launcher. PC's also not getting the mod support, unfortunately, which sucks, because that would have been a cool one. And what was the other PC thing? Was there another specific thing? It might not have been a specific thing. It might have just been in general, we're just not going to support it beyond that. So, sucks. It sucks, and I'm really saddened by it. It's been a while since I've been, like, so saddened by a game, a video game related announcement, you know? Like, there's news that annoys me, and there's news that I don't like, but, like, I felt sad, you know? Like, I really liked FF15 from the day it came out, even though the game was fucked. As someone said, it was a piece of shit, but it was our piece of shit. Even though the game was fucked, I really liked it. And as the DLCs kept coming out and as the patches and improvements came out, it genuinely kept getting better. And recently, I finally went through some of the updated and Royal Edition content that I hadn't been through yet. So, like the revamped Chapter 13 from a long time ago, which I had never replayed, and the totally different Chapter 14, which I won't spoil for anyone, but it was fantastic. They had done such a huge amount of work to make the end game even better than it already was. I was really impressed, and I don't know. I was just excited to see more. I was excited and hopeful that with episodes Luna Freya, Aranea, and Noctis, we would perhaps get to see like more Gralea or Cartanica or not Niflheim, the other one. Since those places like somewhat exist in the game, you can at least see that there are maps. There's a lot of art done for them, so I kind of assumed we'd be going back to there, and definitely looking at episode Arden, where like episode Arden is this big elaborate like, hey, you're in a real still constructed city. You're not in destroyed Insomnia. Here's young Regis. Here's a bunch of new characters. Like episode Arden looks so elaborate that it gives me the sense that that kind of scope for the other three DLCs probably wasn't an unreasonable thing to expect. So, Royd Ridley says Episode Ignis is the best thing in the game. You know, I wouldn't even argue with you. Episode Ignis and its alternate ending is really fucking cool. Really, really is. I really like the new Insomnia in Royal Edition. I think that's my favorite thing, but Ignis is amazing. And I hope Arden can be just as good, if not better, since that is coming out. But, you know, I mean, you know, I guess the one good thing about this is, you know, they didn't lay anyone off. Hajime Tabata left the studio, I assume because he wanted to do the rest of the FF15 content, and this kind of leaves him in an awkward situation where he's not going to be able to work on it. You know, I can't imagine he was happy with this decision. You know, if he was happy with this decision, he'd probably still be working at the studio. So I think that's kind of sad. But hey, you know, he made a really cool game at the end of the day. He did it. So pour one out. Pour one out. At the same time, I talked a bit about this on Twitter, but like, I guess to elaborate, if you guys don't mind me rambling about this for a little bit longer, Square Enix did, so this was like a 2-day process, right? So day 2, yesterday, was when they announced all this stuff, like cancellation of the DLCs, etc. The day before that, Square Enix had put out a press release stating that they were doing what's called a financial write-down on work at Luminous Studio. So what a write-down is, I guess the short version of what a write-down is when a company knows they're going to lose money on something, like a meaningful amount of money, not like a tiny amount of money. They know they're going to lose a large amount of money on something, and it is a controlled loss that they're aware of, and it's not taking them by surprise, and most of the time it's not going to debilitate your company. If it's going to debilitate your company, it's kind of hard to report to investors because they're not going to take it well either way. But the idea is you get out in front of your investors and you say, hey, we're going to lose a lot of money. We know it's coming. We've accounted for it. We're ready for it. It sucks, but don't interpret us losing this money as like, as a trend. You know, like this is an extraordinary circumstance that we're losing money now, and don't assume that this is just going to be normal. So it's a normal thing to do, but it's not often that companies have to do it. Anyway, Square Enix announced that they were taking a $33 million write-down on work done at Luminous Studio 2 days ago. And nobody really knew exactly what the money was for. I think I saw people assuming that it was the new IP that they were purported to be working on. I don't think anyone really suspected it was the FF15 DLC, but alack, it ended up being that. And anyway, in the light of the 15 DLC being canceled, I've got to say I'm not shocked it was canceled when I see the amount of that write-down, right? Green Slime King says, I really hope the rest of the mod tools come despite all this. It would be a huge shame. Yeah, I fucking agree. I really agree. I don't think we're going to see them, unfortunately. But I really wanted the mod tools to come out, so what are you going to do? Anyway, Koliaki asks, why didn't they put another group to work on the DLC? Are they actually happy with the end product? I wouldn't interpret this as happiness. I also wouldn't interpret this as, like, pettiness or anything like that. The money just ain't there, right? So, like, or the profitability just ain't there. So, and Phoenix Seraph, actually, I'm going to get into this right now. Phoenix Seraph asks, how the hell would FF's DLC cost 34 million, 33? Games with much smaller budget come out feeling more developed. There's a lot of staff at Luminous Studio. It is a big AAA studio. So bear in mind, the $33 million is probably, obviously none of us can speak to exactitudes, but it's probably the amount of money spent post Royal Edition release, as in the last monetizable product, till the end of the releases. So it's probably from Royal Edition's launch till whatever the last monetizable planned product is, which might be episode Arden. For the sake of argument, let's say it's episode Arden. So we're talking $33 million for an entire year of development. You know what I mean? I think it says a lot that episode Arden releases in March, right? And it was supposed to be the first, and the other three were supposed to come after that, right? If Arden's only releasing in March, 4 months from now, how much further out were the other three? You know? Even optimistically saying like April, May, June, that's still a lot. And I don't think it's realistic to say April, May, June. I don't believe any of the other FF15 DLCs came out 1 month after each other. I think I'm suspicious that it probably would have last throughout most of 2019. What will happen to FF now, and where does Square Enix stand financially? Will they go mobile? Square Enix is fine. Square Enix is a very wealthy company. They're fine. This isn't going to impact them, meaning like in a significant way. What will happen to FF now? I don't know. Someone else will work on FF, you know? I don't know. Or maybe Luminous Studio will. We don't know. Anyway, so for the sake of argument, let's just say that $33 million meant that all 4 pieces of DLC content, all the mod tools, what was the other canceled shit? Any continued work on Comrades, and whatever other support they wanted to do. Let's just say all of that was going to be finished on the day episode Arden came out. Let's just say, okay? So they did a $33 million write-down. It would have cost more since, you know, there's still 4 months of work that would have been done by that point. Probably would have been more like 40 million by that point, but let's just say 33 million on that day and all the DLC's done. When you hit that day and all that content drops, they'd still have to sell 1.1 million units of a product at $30 of like gross revenue before taxes just to break even. And break even's not a success. Break even is you made $0, you know. For a small company, breaking even's nice, but for a large company, breaking even's absolutely a failure. Like you gotta make money. Otherwise, like your next project, you have to spend back into the hole. They would have to, just for the 33 mil, they'd have to sell 1.1 million units of an imaginary $30 product. And again, $30, you know, gross revenue, net revenue product. Sorry. Not something that's retailing for 30, so something that's retailing for like 45, they would need to sell 1.1 mil just to hit $0 again. And that's assuming 33 million was enough to get everything done, which it fucking ain't enough to get everything done. I'm willing to guess that those costs would have increased dramatically, 40 million, 50 million, etc., as the year would have gone on. And at that point, it just doesn't make sense. And like for you know, for a major release, you're gonna sell millions. Like, you know, when FF15 came out, it sold 7 million really quickly. You know, Kingdom Hearts is gonna do fantastic. The Final Fantasy VII remake gonna do fantastic. But subsequent product releases like DLC and like you know, the FF15 Royal Edition, they don't do those numbers. You know. FF15 Royal Edition, it's not even clear if they sold 1 million units of it at all, you know? And I think that says a lot. You know, we don't even know that Royal Edition hit 1 mil, right? It didn't hit 1 mil on PC. It didn't chart particularly well on consoles. If Royal Edition wasn't selling 1 million units, right? Period. It's really not a safe guess to assume that making all this DLC will sell you 1.1 million plus units, you know, to break even. It definitely looks as though continued investment in FF15 was not a good idea. And I think you had 2 points at which you could cut. I think you could have cut without releasing episode Arden, which would have just made people upset, and clearly episode Arden's a lot further along. Or you could cut after episode Arden, so release that one. But you can't cut during the 3-part finale. right? Could you imagine they released episode Aranea or Lunafreya, whichever one was first, and then they cut after that and just said, yeah, we're not going to finish the three-parter? Could you imagine how upset people would have gotten? So I do, as much as I'm really sad about it, I think they made the right decision. Like, it says a lot that even just from the outside, you can look at the $33 million write-down, and you can look at the products they were making, and you can look at the sales of Royal Edition, and you can clearly see that it wasn't likely that they were making something profitable there at all. It says a lot, you know? Usually these situations are ambiguous, and you kind of hem and haw and go, maybe it could have worked out, maybe it could have worked out, but even just from the outside, now that we know some of the numbers, man, that was too much money, for sure. That's a wild amount of money. So I've seen rumors that the 33 mil might have been Square Enix using the new studio to offset blame for the cost of Luminous Engine. No, I don't. That's just childish, right? Not that you're saying that, sorry, but the notion that they would try to offset blame of something, especially when FF15 already, did make a lot and offset the costs of Luminous Engine. You know what I mean? 33 mil seems an almost impossible amount to spend in 6 months. Oh, it wasn't spent in 6 months. So 33 mil in the report, the 33 mil is a write-down for the 6-month fiscal period. It wasn't spent within that 6 months, but what this is they're saying instead of taking the hits as they come, they're just gonna stack up all the losses and just put them in this 6-month fiscal period just to get it over with. Bam, done. So it wasn't 33 mil spent in 6 months. It's probably more like that 33 mil was spent from, again, Royal Edition releasing the last monetizable product through to Arden, because developers are still going to have to be working on FF15 through to Arden. So it's probably more like a year, actually. And 33 mil for a year is very not outrageous for a AAA development studio. That's just how much shit costs. So in the coming months, do you think we'll have any chance of finding out some of the ideas they had for these scrapped projects? I always hate the idea of new ideas just dying. So Arden's coming out, and they said they're going to put out a little prequel anime thing for Arden, probably just a short OVA that kind of goes before episode Arden, which I guess must have been far in planning as well. And they said, they didn't give any concrete answers, but they said they'd like to tell that story, tell the story they were going to tell in the 3-parter in some other way. Whether that means a novelization or an audio drama or an OVA or what, no idea. I'm sure we will find out. I don't think they would have said it without having that intention. But, hey, we'll probably find out some of it in some way, shape, or form. So. On the topic of Luminous Engine, doesn't Luminous suck, though? I heard it was hard to work with, but maybe I'm wrong. Yeah, so there were a lot of serious problems working with Luminous Engine early on. However, Tabata and other high-ups at the studio reported that it got better, and they got better with it. That was actually why they chose, was it last year? I think last year, to announce that, hey, the new game they're working on at the studio is going to be in Luminous Engine. Because they're like, hey, we're good at it now. We're good at Luminous Engine now, so we're going to stick with it. So, they made it work. It was previously it was famously not chosen for Kingdom Hearts 3 because it didn't really meet the requirements for Kingdom Hearts 3, which I can believe. You got to choose your engine for each product, but for Luminous, it does seem like they got good enough with it. At least, by their accounts, they got good enough with it. So, yeah. So I don't know. It sucks. It just sucks. Again, I'm glad that we're getting episode Arden because it looks really good, and I do think that cutting and running. I shouldn't say cutting and running. Nobody's making money here. There aren't Square Enix execs running to the banks. This is a loss. This is a loss for everyone. This is a loss for fans. This is a loss for Square Enix. This is a huge loss for Tabata and Luminous Studios. But cutting and ending your development process here instead of, risking the trilogy and only putting out 1 or 2 episodes, I think is probably the better result. It would have been pretty awful if they would have built 1 or 2 of the episodes and then cut. So, isn't that the downfall of all huge open worldish games that make their own engine? Looking at MGS5, I wouldn't say all of them. I believe CD Projekt has a proprietary engine they made for The Witcher. I believe. I might be wrong. Maybe it's just Unreal. I'm just trying to remember. I forget the name of the company. Was able to make the Snowdrop engine alongside the Division, which is a super powerful engine that's been used on a lot of other games. Eidos was able to make the. Is it called the Dawn engine? It was called Glacier originally for Hitman Absolution. And then that turned, I believe, into the Dawn engine, which admittedly not huge open world really, but which was used for Deus Ex Human Revolution, Mankind Divided, and I think Hitman, like the new Hitman 2016, 2017, whatever it is. Square Enix constantly making new engines is honestly a terrible decision. Yeah, so that's why they don't do it anymore. They Crystal Tools was built back coming into PS3 because admittedly they did need a new engine, and at the time Unreal Engine 3 did not have documentation and shit for Japan. It was not really as usable in Japan at all. There wasn't really an option. At the time everyone kind of had to make their own engines. So Crystal Tools was that, and then Luminous was the one after that they were making for this game. As kind of an evolution of Crystal Tools, and that's actually it. It's only these two. They seem like bigger and more horrible stories than they are, since it's been such a long time since the announcement of Versus 13, where they started with Crystal Tools and then eventually worked over to Luminous Engine. But in actuality, it's really just those 2 instances. It looks a lot worse than it is because Versus 13 took a decade to materialize as anything. But yeah, no, so they don't do it anymore. FF7 remake is going to be on Unreal Engine 4. Kingdom Hearts 3 is on Unreal Engine 4. All of Tokyo RPG, whatever they're called, Tokyo RPG Factory, their games, Saga Scarlet Grace, they're on Unity. Square Enix, yeah, now they use a lot of established engines as well, so. But I think everyone's kind of there now, people don't like Konami, so they don't care, and that's fair. But like Konami, built Fox Engine, they still used it for PES, but like now they are using Unity for other stuff. Like the new Bomberman that came out was built on Unity. People ain't doing their own engines anymore, really. What engine is Nier Automata on? That's actually on Platinum's proprietary engine that I don't know if it has a public name. In the studio, they probably have something they refer to it as, but that was an engine that they started building for... Was it Mad World? I think it was Mad World was the first game they built it for, because I think I remember reading a thing about how like early Bayonetta stuff used some Mad World things. And that's just been an engine they've iterated on and built specifically for action games for an incredibly long time, Platinum's just doing their own shit. But that their games all have such a huge amount of shared game mechanics that it makes sense to build their own specialty engine and just keep using that over and over and over again. Kind of like MT Framework for Capcom, except I guess this is a little more of a narrow focus whereas MT Framework did fucking everything. Speaking of which, Fantaray, Capcom's other, engine they were working on, we still don't really know what happened with that. We never really got the end results, so yeah. That sucked. So yeah, FF15. I guess it's over now. Yeah. Fantaray's been being used in that new game they announced, right? The one with the dragon fight. Yeah, Deep Down is what it was called. Yoshinori Ono was the producer on it, I believe. I don't know if he's still in that role, and the last we heard of it from him was, I think, 2 years ago. He said in an interview that it was going away for a while, or maybe it was 3 years ago. He said it was going away for a while, and when we next see it, it will be a very different game. So, I don't know. Maybe it's still coming. I don't know. Yeah, no, that was the only game announced with Fantaray. So, the game you're referring to, you're saying, no, there was one announced at the past E3 or TGS, I think, not Deep Down. That was Project Awakening by Cygames, I think, if I remember right. Different game, different engine. So, yeah. Yeah, anyhow, yeah, FF15, what a fucking story, right? It's a shame that I do feel as a fan like I wish they would have just looked at how much money they made on FF15, because it did sell, very well, the base version of the game. I think over 8 million units was 8 or 9 million was like the final tally. Fuck, did it hit 10 mil? I don't quite remember. Let me just Google it. It probably did. I would be shocked, because I think it sold 7 at launch. Wow. Okay, 8.1 mil worldwide as of September 7th, 2018. So it actually didn't hit the 10 that they wanted, because I remember 10 was like a goal, which is a shame. Admittedly, for a game that had give or take, 8 years of development off and on, it did need a lot. So, it sold really well, and as a fan, I do feel like I wish they could have just invested through on all the DLC and managed to deliver, a more full version of the game, including this, this finale content. But pragmatically, again, with the numbers the way they are, publicly known and publicly viewable, I don't think financially that it made sense to continue making the FF15 DLC content. And, as a fan, I want it and I don't care, but pragmatically, I can clearly see that, you ain't gonna fucking make money on that. Like, the only way they would make money on that is like a hyper long-term look, where if they came back on PS5 and they launched, Final Fantasy 15 Royalist Edition that comes with everything, and try to sell it for $40 again or $60 or whatever, but it would have taken, like, to recoup these costs, it would have taken a much longer time. It would have gotten way, way more drawn out. And again, at that point, I can kind of see, like, okay, yeah, that's a lot. So, have there been any games with development times around that length that actually come out great? It's tricky, because 15... Okay, so the story of Versus 13 and FF15, I'll try to tell this as quickly as possible. So Versus 13 was announced 2006. Final Fantasy 15 released 2016, 10 years, right? So the game was not in development for 10 years. FF Versus 13 didn't really start development in earnest until Final Fantasy 13 shipped, which I think was 2008. So we can cut 2 years off of that already, so 8 years. So they worked on Versus 13 for, I believe, 2 years on the PS3 after 13 shipped. And it became clear they weren't going to be able to deliver the game that they wanted to deliver on the PS3 So they actually stopped development on it entirely. And for a few years, there was actually no development happening. And then in I think it was 2013, they picked up development on, 2012 rather. I think they picked up development on FF15, and they were able to use certain parts of Versus 13, obviously, namely, certain parts of the story, characters, music. So they were able to get a running start there, but they were effectively starting a new project when they hit FF15, or like they were, rebooting it. So in actuality, I don't think it's totally fair to assess it as a 10-year development cycle, since it's a really unique circumstance, and most companies wouldn't be able to support something like that either. This is really like Square Enix wanting to fulfill that vision, and it just took a fucking lot. So, on the question of any game that takes that long, does any game that takes that long actually come out good? There's only a few games that have really taken 10 years. If we are going to use that number, which again, I don't really think is a fair assessment. And to answer your question, not really. But I think it's more just like nothing ever hits that number, right? Now, if we're talking like 4 or 5 years, then yes, I mean, many games have come out after 4 or 5 years of work and been good. I don't think that's a question. I mean, Kingdom Hearts 3 isn't out yet, but sure looks fucking good. I tell you what. Breath of the Wild, it was a 4 or 5 year project, right? I believe Mario Odyssey was also a similar amount of time. It's not that amount of time isn't unusual. It's a lot, and when you try to think about it in an abstract way, it's scary, like having that much time devoted to it. But that's just the reality of making huge AAA bits of content. So a lot of games with those development cycles have come out just fine. The Witcher 3, I believe, is another example of a game that took 4 or 5 years and it worked out. So yeah, it's true. Kirby's Return to Dreamland was in development for a long time, a weirdly large amount of time, but yeah, that came out great. So yeah, so I don't know. That's it. I was always kind of hoping and praying secretly that we'd eventually get an episode Gladiolus 2. Just Gladio. Gladio just needs something better. Gladio got fucked, man. Gladio got fucked. The main story's busted, but it's cool. And then Prompto has his little run around Niflheim that's cool. And then Ignis has his let's fucking save this fucking place and let's save the world cool bit, and it's dope. And then Comrades is whatever. Arden looks fucking sick, where it's like, hey, I'm Arden, I'm awake now, and I don't like all you guys. Look, there's young Regis. Look, we're in a modern city. They all got fucking cool shit. And what Gladio got was like a 30-minute walk down a stone hall. Damn it, Gladio got fucking gypped. Seriously, I'm so bummed about episode Gladiolus. Nothing will ever make that up. We need to pick up the mantle somehow. If only the mod tools had come out. I do hope the mod tools do come out. I'm not holding out hope, though. I kind of assume when they said they're stopping continued PC development that they're, not planning to release those. So, yeah. So I think I can probably wrap up FF15 thoughts. Oh my god, it's been 40 minutes almost. Jeez. I guess we can actually get on with playing the game. Thank you guys for entertaining me in my ramble. I know some people in the chat, when I started going into it, were like, no, it's fine, it's nice. So thank you guys. I appreciate it. Yeah. I guess closing thought, since it just hit my mind just now. Someone on Twitter asked me, do you think that they would have still been able to work on the DLC if they hadn't done the mobile edition? No, I don't think so. If anything, I think the mobile edition was probably like probably quite profitable, between the actual mobile release and also the console releases that came afterwards. I think that project, if anything, was actually probably a good idea. I know a lot of people, don't like the way it looks, and some people don't like the way it plays, but I think it's a good product. It might feel a little worse emotionally because FF15 was kind of never the game we all wanted it to be, but I think it was a good idea in the end. Oh, it was UL0. Okay, there you go. So yeah. Did it take away resources? Well, I mean, certainly, yeah, they would have had to spend money on it, but I mean, it's clear that it wasn't as big a production as any other given thing. I mean, it's still a big game, don't get me wrong, but also, like, I think the idea was really sound. Even if you don't like the execution, I'd have a hard time picturing myself as a Square Enix exec sitting in the pitch meeting and saying no. When they're saying, we're going to make a cut down version of FF15 for mobile devices and eventually port that to consoles. If I'm the Square Enix exec sitting there, I'm not going to look at the paper and go, no, that's a bad idea. That, if anything, that seems like a good idea. Especially considering the mobile market in Japan is so fucking absurd. Yeah, I mean, especially if I guess if you were a Japanese person, that would make that context even harder to deny, So, Hirosh says, I actually really want to play Pocket Edition. I heard it was quite good. It is good. It's simple, is probably the worst thing about it. It's a little overly simple, mainly the combat, of course. Everything else is, just walking and talking to people, which you can only make that so intricate. Probably the worst thing is that it's simple, but it's certainly not bad. It still has all the voice acting. It still has all the phenomenal music. And I think it does actually have some new stuff. I never actually finished it, but, yeah. 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 Okay. I think I can actually, for real, wrap up. Tune in next time on FF15 as we stream the 14 crossover content that comes out in December, and then episode Arden when that comes out in March. And that's probably it. Pour one out. Pour one out.